Hello and welcome to Narayana IS Academy. In this session of the top topics of the week, we'll delve into 5 most important topics from the Hindu and the Indian Express. So let's explore each topic in depth so that you're well informed and prepared for the examination. So let's kick off with the first topic.
25% of India's total area under green cover. So this particular article actually discusses about the India State of Forest Report 2023, where we will be going through the comprehensive analysis of different dimensions actually discussed over there, where we will actually understand about what do you mean by forest cover, and then what do you mean by tree cover, and all those definitions we'll be discussing over here. And also we'll be looking at the state of forest conservation in India. So this particular topic becomes very important for both the prelims and mains under environment, and under GS paper 3 environmental pollution and degradation, finally conservation. Okay, so now let's move forward. So if you see in one of the previous years, that is specifically in 2020, there was actually a question on examine the status of the forest resources in India and its resultant impact on climate change. So this was a 10 marker. So any kind of question with respect to that of the forest, the initiative, the status of decrease or increase, etc. becomes very important, or at least you need to quote your data from these kind of relevant sources, specifically these reports that have been released by the government. Now, moving forward, let us see why this particular topic has been in news. So recently, the Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change had actually released the India State of Forest Report 2023 at the Forest Research Institute in Dehradun. So now let us quickly jump into what the report is all about. Okay. So this particular report is a biennial report. Okay. So it is a biennial report. And this is, what do you mean by biennial? This is actually released once in 2 years. Okay, so it is released once in 2 years, and it is released by the Forest Survey of India, and the previous edition was in 2021. So now let us actually see further. So according to the forest cover report, so according to the forest cover report, all the land, what do you mean by this particular term of forest cover? That is what we will actually discuss over here. So what do you mean by this particular forest cover? This actually includes all the lands that is more than or equal to 1 hectare in area. So the forest cover is nothing but any area which is actually more than or equal to 1 hectare in area, and also which has a tree canopy of more than or equal to 10%. Okay, and 10% of this area actually has to have tree canopy irrespective of the ownership and the legal status. Okay, so this is what is the definition of forest cover as given by this particular report. And also it includes the orchards, and it also includes the bamboo cover and palm. So this is the first one. We've actually understood about the forest cover. The next one is the recorded forest area. So what do you mean by recorded forest area? This is also inclusive of all the geographical areas that are recorded as forest in the government records. Okay, so these are the recorded forest areas, and this actually consists of the reserved forest, this consists of the protected forest, etc. under the Indian Forest Act of 1927. So now we are just looking at the basics. Okay, so this particular report is important because this actually gives you a lot of data and the statistics on what has been the status of increase or decline in the mangrove cover, the bamboo cover. What are the areas that are actually prone to the forest fires? Okay, what is the percentage of it? Which states actually are increasingly prone to this particular forest fire, and how all these actually impact the climate change? All these dimensions are very, very important. That's why we've taken up this particular report. Okay. So this particular report gave the definition of what is this forest cover. Next one, it talks about the recorded forest area, which actually includes your reserved forest, your protected forest, etc. And also it actually has the unclassed forest, the village forest, and the areas that are designated or as the forest in the revenue records or any kind of state act or a local law. So these are the recorded forest area. Now moving forward, if you actually see the classification of forest cover that is actually mentioned here, this is the class of it. That is, it can be either very dense forest. When it is called a very dense forest, when the canopy density is more than or equal to 70%. What do you mean by canopy? So this is your canopy cover. When this is actually more than or equal to 70% of the particular area, then this particular area is classified as very dense forest, and moderately dense when it is actually 40%, that is greater than or equal to, on the canopy density is between 40% to 70%. And it is called as the open forest when it is between 10% to 40%, that is the canopy cover. And finally, it is called the scrub when the canopy density is actually more than 10%, generally with shrubs interspersed in between the trees. That is, these are trees, right? So you actually have shrubs interspersed here. So that is called as a scrub land. And finally, the non-forest, that is the lands that do not fall into any of the above classes. And this particularly includes areas like croplands where the settlements are there. All these areas, you can also include the water bodies, the grasslands, then snow clad areas, deserts, etc. So these are the classification of the forest cover. Now moving forward, let us see, it is actually speaking about tree cover. What do you mean by tree cover? So far we've actually seen what is forest cover, and we have actually seen the reserved forest area or recorded forest area, right? Now we are actually looking into the tree cover. What do you mean by tree cover? These are the areas covered by trees outside the recorded forest areas. These recorded forest areas we saw, right? Whichever are recorded by the government records. So anything outside it is called as the tree cover area. This also includes small patches of trees which are less than 1 hectare in size. It also includes individual trees. It can be block plantations, it can be linear plantations, and it can be scattered trees. Okay, so these are all the part of the tree cover. So now if you actually see, are there any kind of legal provisions for protection of the forest cover or tree cover in India? Yes, we have the National Forest Policy of 1988. Let us actually see what it is. Yeah. So now let us actually see, what does this National Forest Policy of 1988 mandate? So according to the National Forest Policy, at least 1/3 of the total area of India must actually have forest and tree cover. This is what it is. That is, at least 1/3 of the total land area in India should be under the forest or the tree cover in order to ensure the ecological sustainability or the stability. Okay. And in case if the area is hilly or mountainous regions, then what happens? It has to be characterized by at least 2/3 of the area must actually be covered by the forest in order to prevent soil erosion and any kind of further degradation. So this is what the National Forest Policy of 1988 actually said. Now, how do you actually link it with that of Kyoto Protocol? That also becomes very, very important. Okay, as far as as long as you know your national conventions is very good, but how you link it with that of your international guidelines or conventions, that becomes even more important. So if you see, according to the Kyoto Protocol, the definition of, we saw the definition of forest cover and all, right? So according to Kyoto Protocol, the definition of the forest can vary from one country to another depending upon what is the capacity of the country, what are all the capabilities of the country in order to maintain the forest cover. Okay, so this is what it is. So it has actually given few of the criteria. First one, the crown cover percentage. So Kyoto Protocol actually says that the minimum tree cover, that is the minimum tree crown cover, that is canopy, it actually falling within the range of, it has to be within the range of 10 to 30%. However, India has actually adopted 10% threshold. If you see the minimum area of stand, we actually saw what is the meaning, right? So forested areas should have a minimum area between 0.05 to 1 hectare, and India actually had adopted 1 hectare as minimum. And moving forward, the minimum height of trees. So what does the Kyoto Protocol actually say? The trees in these areas should have the potential to reach a minimum height of at least 2 to 5 meters at maturity in their natural habitat. So this is what the definition of forest has been given by the Kyoto Protocol. Now moving forward, let us see what have been the key findings of this report. So these are merely numbers, okay? You just need to have a note of the range, whether there has been a decrease compared to the previous year or whether there has been an increase compared to the previous year. So first one, forest and tree cover. So forest and tree cover in India actually constitute around 25.17 percentage, okay, of the country's geographical area. Of the total, country's geographical area, what happens? 25.17 percentage is both the forest as well as the tree cover. That is approximately 8,27,356. This is not important, but this is important. So out of this 25%, 21.76 is the forest cover and 3.41 is actually your tree cover. And if you see, when you compare the data of 2023 to 2021, there has been an increase of around 1,445 kilometers square in forest and tree cover. So the first parameter, forest and tree cover, there has been an increase compared to that of the previous report. So now let us see the trends of the states and the union territories. So if you see, the states or the UTs that have the highest forest and tree cover in terms of their area is Madhya Pradesh actually ranks number 1, followed by Arunachal Pradesh and Maharashtra. So this is also to an extent very, very important, okay. So if you see here, this is the forest and the tree cover of India. This is the report that actually talks about it. So if you see, the total geographical area is actually 32.87 lakh square kilometer. And out of this, what happens? The forest cover is 7.15 lakh. That is nothing but 21.7%. Okay. And if you see, the tree cover is 3.41. So this together actually comprises around 25.17 percentage. Then you have the scrub land that constitutes 1.33 and the non-forest land is 73.5 percentage. Okay. So this is actually what the report says. So first we actually saw the forest cover. Now we will see with respect to that of how the states have been performing, right? First we actually saw Madhya Pradesh was actually the highest in terms of the forest cover. Here maximum increase in the forest and the tree cover in terms of area that has been that was achieved by Chhattisgarh, followed by UP as well as Odisha. Maximum decrease is actually seen in Madhya Pradesh and Karnataka, Ladakh and all. This is maximum decrease in the forest and tree cover with respect to the area. Next one, highest forest cover with respect to area. That also includes Madhya Pradesh, Arunachal and Chhattisgarh. And highest forest cover, this is nothing but percentage of geographical area. See, what do you mean by area and geographical area? For example, if 100 square kilometer is the total area of India, out of that, how much this actually possesses, how much Madhya Pradesh actually has is defined as area. Here, what is called as geographical area. Out of the total area, Madhya Pradesh actually has what is the percentage of forest cover. That is called as a percentage of geographical area. So, the highest forest cover as a percentage of geographical area, that is Lakshadweep, for example, is 100 square kilometers. So out of this, what happens? 91.33 is forest cover. So the highest is Lakshadweep. 91.33 of its land is covered by forest. Okay. So that is Lakshadweep, followed by Mizoram and followed by Andaman and Nicobar Highlands. Okay. So this is actually done. Now, if you see the maximum increase in the forest cover, that has actually been in Mizoram, followed by Odisha as well as Gujarat. Next one, highest tree cover, again in terms of area, Maharashtra, followed by Rajasthan and UP. And finally, highest tree cover in percentage of its own geographical area is Chandigarh, Delhi as well as Kerala. So these are few of the statistics that we actually have to know in terms of which states and the UTs have been performing comparatively well in terms of the tree as well as the forest cover. Now we will see the region-wise highlights. So what is the amount of decrease or increase in the Western Ghats? What happened to the hill districts? What is the status of the northeastern region, etc. So first one, let's see the Western Ghats area. the report actually states that 73% of this particular Western Ghats area, that is comprises of, that is, it is covered by forest. So 73% of the geographical area of Western Ghats has forest cover, and last decade it has actually undergone a loss. So again, there is a decrease in the forest cover of up to 58.22 square kilometers, followed by the hill districts. Okay, so here 40% of the geographical area of hill districts are under forest cover, and there has been surprisingly increase in the forest cover in the hill districts by 234.14 kilometers square. Next one is the northeastern region. So in the entire northeastern region, 67% of the region actually has the forest and the tree cover. However, there has been a decrease in the forest cover by around 327 square kilometers. Okay, so the Western Ghats area, there has been a decline in the forest cover, and also in the northeastern region there has been a decline in terms of forest cover due to degradation and other activities, whereas the hill districts actually have performed comparatively better. So this is what we infer from this article. Next one, mangroves. Okay, so if you actually see this particular map over here, or the pie chart over here, you can see West Bengal actually has the highest share of mangroves, that is 42.45%. Okay, and this is actually followed by Andaman and Nicobar Islands, 12%, and then you actually have Gujarat, that is 23.32. Sorry, this is actually the second one. Okay, the first is West Bengal, next is actually the Gujarat. This is mangrove cover 2023, how they have actually performed. Okay, and you have Tamil Nadu 0.84, Odisha, Maharashtra, Kerala, etc., and how they have actually been performed. So these are the pie charts and data that are actually taken from the original report itself. Okay, so the mangrove cover in India actually constitutes around 0.15% of the entire geographical area, and they are classified as a very dense mangroves. Okay, that is, these very dense mangroves, they constitute 29.33%, that is of this 0.15, 29.33 are very dense mangroves, then moderately dense are 30.07, and open mangroves are around 40.60%. However, if you compare with that of the previous years and the previous reports, what happens, there have been an overall decrease of around 7.43 kilometers square. However, there are increases that are actually been noticed in certain states like Andhra Pradesh as well as Maharashtra. Okay, so this is the coverage of mangroves. Next one, forest fire. This report actually says that there have been, highest fire incidences in cases of Uttarakhand, Uttarakhand wildfires, right? And then Odisha and in the state of Chhattisgarh. And also it says that around 2.5% of the entire area is actually prone to severe, forest fires. So let us actually see. So there have been almost 2,03,544 fire hotspots that have been detected. However, there has been a decline when compared to that of 2021, and the highest cases were in Uttarakhand, Odisha and Chhattisgarh, and 36% of the country's forest cover, according to the report, is prone to frequent forest fires, of which 2.81 has extreme proximity, or it is prone to, or it has vulnerability to fires, and 7.85% of forest cover very highly fire prone. So this is with respect to that of the forest fires. Next one, with respect to that of bamboo resources. So there has been a significant increase in terms of the bamboo resources across different states, across different states of India. That is around 1,54,670 kilometers square. You just have to know roughly whether there has been an increase or decrease. Okay, that's what will be asked in the exam, and not these numbers. So there has been an increase. Okay, so increase of around 5227 kilometers square since 2021, and the largest bamboo bearing states become Madhya Pradesh. Sometimes it can be asked that the largest bamboo bearing states in India include Arunachal Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, etc. So you need to know that Madhya Pradesh and Arunachal Pradesh are over there. And also Arunachal Pradesh has recorded a significant increase in the bamboo resources. Okay, and but however, if you see states like Karnataka, they have actually decreased. The bamboo resources have decreased in that particular state. Next one is agroforestry. So what do you mean by agroforestry? Agroforestry is nothing but it is a kind of land management system where there is integration of cultivation of trees along with crops, you have pastures, etc. Okay, so you will have trees, then you have crops also, then you have some pastures and again trees. So this integration is actually called agroforestry. So if you see, the tree green cover under agroforestry has also been increased when compared to the 2013 levels by 20.02 percentage. So this is what is the data regarding agroforestry. Next is carbon stock. What do you mean by carbon stock? Carbon stock, as the name suggests, it can also be known as the carbon pool. This is the capacity of a particular system in order to absorb or sequester the carbon, okay, or it can store the carbon. So if you see how much capacity does Indian forest have in order to store or absorb carbon is 7,285.5 million tons actually has been recorded as the carbon stock. This is an increase of around 81.5 million tons. Next one, if you see the soil organic carbon pool, that actually has the largest share of 55%. And finally, if you see the highest carbon stock, that is actually accounted by Arunachal Pradesh, followed by Madhya Pradesh. These two states have actually been performing very, very high. So overall, over the past decade, what has been the range or the kind of decrease or increase in this forest cover, tree cover, mangrove cover, bamboo cover, that we will quickly go through. This is very, very important for your examination. Okay. So decadal trends from the year 2013 to 2023. First one, forest cover. This has increased. Okay. So first one is increased. Next one, if you see tree cover, this has also increased. Then the mangrove cover, yes, this has also increased. Agroforestry cover, this has also increased. And finally, the growing stock, this has also increased. So all these parameters have actually increased. So these are the decadal trends. Okay. So here we've actually in detail discussed or analyzed the entire state of India's forest report 2023. You need to know about the the report, how it actually becomes important for the examination, what are the terms that you need to know and the definition that you need to understand, so that you can make notes and jot it down for replicating in your mains answers. Okay.
That is related to World Trade Organization, and we're talking about GATTification. Now this is important from economy perspective. Look at this previous year question which is directly related to World Trade Organization. So such questions can be expected in the examination. Okay. Now moving ahead. What is happening right now is GATTification. But to understand what is GATTification, you have to understand what do you mean by GATT. So the long form of GATT is General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. Now please understand, in the entire world, we do not have any government which is for the world. That is, world government is not existing. We have governments at the national level. But now let's say there is a trade happening between India's any state, between Kerala and Karnataka. Central government will play some key role to ensure that the trade happens in a right manner. But when it comes to international trade, we don't have any world government. So sometimes things become very complicated. There are no fixed rules. A strong country might come up with its own rules. So it was being thought that to serve international trade, there should be international trade and there should not be any trade barrier brought by other countries to have a really good trade in the entire world. The idea of GATT came into picture. So this idea came in the year 1947. That was after the World War II. So we saw World War II. That was a devastating event. And the entire world was suffering because of it. And after that, it was very much important for the world to recover. And one of the best way to recover was to have a better trade, a smooth trade. So at that time, total 23 countries initially came up and started this general agreement on tariffs and trade. Now, it was just an agreement, it is not an organization. GATT was a provisional agreement and not a formal organization as such, like UN or WTO as such. It was an agreement, and it was expected that after few months or few years, we will bring in an organization, we will construct or establish an organization. The name of that organization was supposed to be International Trade Organization, but in reality it never actually happened. This ITO never got materialized. So this was the idea of GATT in the year 1947. Now, to bring in this ITO, many efforts were being made. So you will see there were many rounds of talks being held from 1947 till the year 1995. For example, we have in the year 1960-61 Dillon round, in 64 to 67 Kennedy round, 73 to 79 Tokyo round, then 1986 to 1994 Uruguay round. Now this, when we say round, it means people or representatives from different countries are coming together, sitting together and negotiating what can we do about this trade. So such talks were held, and after so many talks, after this Uruguay round specifically, we came up with the idea of WTO, World Trade Organization, in the year 1995. So there was an agreement called Marrakesh Agreement in the year 1995 that was signed by almost 166 countries. Almost means some members joined later on, but right now there are total 166 countries who are part of World Trade Organization, and now it's an organization, a formal organization, and not a normal agreement as such. So it's an organization which is supposed to take care of the international trade. So let's say a trade is happening between India and China, or China and Afghanistan, or Afghanistan and America. Any such trade will have to follow some rules or some regulations, and those rules are made by World Trade Organization, and everyone will have to accept it because they are members of this World Trade Organization. So because of World Trade Organization, what will happen? A strong country cannot come up with its own rule. Rather, even the strong country will have to follow the rules made by World Trade Organization. So whether it is USA or Russia or China or India, all will follow the rules made by this organization. So some kind of governance at the world level is taking place since this World Trade Organization came into picture. Now look at the kind of organizational structure we have with respect to World Trade Organization. So if you look at WTO, at the top level, there will be ministerial conference. So ministerial conference is the highest decision making body. Any decision that will be taken will be done by this ministerial conference, and usually this conference takes place once in 2 years. There is no fixed timeline as such, but usually it happens. Okay. Then there is one body called dispute settlement body. Let's say there is a dispute between India and USA on a particular issue of trade. So that issue has to be solved at WTO. So there is this body called dispute settlement body which will take care of it. And any decision they will make, it will be binding on these countries. And in case you don't like the decision made by this dispute settlement body, you can go ahead with appeal. So we have this appellate body also. And in this appellate body, there are 7 permanent members. Now this is very important. These members are getting from different countries. They are representing the entire WTO. But what I want you to understand is this body right now is facing some problem. Right now, since 1995 it is working, but it's facing a problem wherein USA is not allowing this appellate body to work. So that appellate body, which consists of 7 members, they are supposed to be appointed there, but the appointment of the members is being stopped by USA, because of which appellate body is not working, because of which in case there is a dispute between USA and India, they go to this dispute settlement body, but then they don't like the decision made by the dispute settlement body, then they say we'll go to appellate body. And till the time appellate body does not give any kind of solution, that issue does not get resolved, it will continue as it is. And people are liking it, especially USA is liking it, that let the appellate body not work, we'll do whatever we want to. So such is the condition right now. So we are saying what is happening right now is WTO is GATTifying, or GATTification is taking place. So one idea to look at WTO is to understand the neoliberal world order. See, since the time of 1990, we see the entire world has got one superpower in the form of USA. Earlier we had USA, USSR, but from 1990 onwards we have just one superpower, that is USA. And this neoliberal world order was established with the support of USA. So even in India we saw LPG reforms and all. So after that we saw the role of WTO became very crucial. Everyone became part of the same system. And this WTO was working really good with the support of USA. And right now the same USA is not allowing it to work. So since the year 2019 it has weakened this dispute settlement body. And when we look at such an organization where all the countries are involved, we call it multilateral organization. And multilateralism was getting promoted. But right now it is not happening. Right now it is in decline to a good extent. And what countries are doing? They're not ready to follow the rules or laws made by any international body, right? That is WTO. They want their own rules. And what they will do is they'll go for political negotiations. For example, USA and India may negotiate what will be the tariffs, what will be the tax on imports and exports, rather than they listen to this rules made by the WTO. So this kind of power politics is happening right now. The focus is on diplomacy, the focus is on political negotiations rather than the legal resolution of the issue. So this is what is exactly happening right now. Related to India's steel frame, that is civil services. Now in examination, civil service reforms becomes an important topic. So as part of your GS paper 2, role of civil services in a democracy. In this section, you can be asked a question on this topic. Also in prelims, you can expect a very easy topic wherein what is the role of civil servants in the policy making, or some its role can be asked directly. Now look at this previous year question. Initially, civil services in India were designed to achieve the goals of neutrality and effectiveness, which seems to be lacking in the present context. Do you agree with this view that drastic reforms are required in civil services? Please comment. So these drastic reforms, this is the core topic which was already asked in the year 2017. And such questions can also be repeated. So you should be prepared. Now, the article in the newspaper, that is The Hindu, it specifically talks about IAS. And they are saying that we need some reforms in the IAS. Now we are going beyond IAS and looking at entire civil services. Now first of all, when we say civil service, many students get confused with the term public service. See, public service is being done by almost everyone who is doing something really good, or who is even part of government, or even if they are not part of government. For example, a person serving in the military is also doing public service. A person who is a politician, he is also doing public service. A person who is part of an NGO is also doing something with regard to public service. But when we say civil service, it is very much specific. See, in the government, we have three different organs. One is the legislature, another is the executive, and third is the judiciary. Now, if we talk just about executive, this executive organ of the government is divided into two parts. One is the political executive, another one is the permanent executive or bureaucratic. So see, there will be two kinds of people in the executive. One is the political. So all these politicians who are getting elected and they become part of government, that is the chief minister or prime minister or other ministers, all are part of executive, but they are political executive, and they will be changed after few years. Let's say after 5 years, after the elections, they will be changed. But there will be some people who will be permanently there as part of executive. And when you look at these people, and if you remove the armed forces from it, then this entire permanent executive is termed as civil service. So you all are actually trying to become part of this permanent executive or civil service. And this chunk of people who are part of this permanent executive, this is very important. Why? Because this entire country is going to be governed by these people. So they are the main pillars of government. Most importantly, whenever any decision is being taken, whether by chief minister or prime minister, by any minister, that decision is based on the expert advice given by this bureaucracy. So their role is very important in governance. Then in case there is some kind of a conflict or some kind of a crisis, let's say suddenly we saw tsunami, suddenly there is an earthquake, or there is a pandemic like COVID-19. In such situations, the entire structure of this bureaucracy comes into picture, and their roles becomes very important in handling or managing such a crisis. Then you see, in India we have a uniform or a similar kind of administration throughout the country. That is possible because of this civil service, which is very much uniform throughout the country. And fourth is the socio-economic development. See, India as a country, or our constitution wants that our country should develop, our people should develop, they become empowered. So their social status should improve. Economically, they should become better. All these things are possible with the role of civil servants, because they play a key role in the policy making. Whatever policy is being made at the central level, at the state level, or whether it is being implemented, civil servants have a key role to play. That's why these are important. Now, let's understand the evolution of Indian civil services. So, it dates back to the colonial era, that is the British time period. So, in the year 1911, one system was introduced, that is Indian Civil Services, that is ICS. And at that point of time, their role was very much only reduced to checking the law and order situation and collecting the revenue. That's why the name for IS officer many a times is district collector. The term collector is coming from their role which was there at the British time. So initially, for the British government, the revenue had to be collected from the entire country. That task was given to this ICS. And see, there is a difference between the kind of state India was when we had British rule and the kind of state India is when we do not have British Raj, rather we have our own constitution. So when we had British Raj, we were having a police state. Police state means a state which just cares about law and order. They have nothing to do with your development. So there won't be any rights given to the citizens, or there won't be any care about the welfare of the citizens. Whereas when India got its independence and we implemented our own constitution, we rather became a welfare state rather than a police state. And welfare state says that the government has to take care of law and order, as well as government will have to take care of the development and welfare of its people. So government comes up with policies to help people come out of their problems. For example, to deal with poverty, unemployment, or some kind of social issues like untouchability. All these will be dealt by the government. And when we are saying government, obviously civil services is part of it. So in the colonial era, it was just restricted to law and order and revenue collection. But after independence, its role became development oriented. And right now, we are observing some new challenges coming up. Those challenges are with respect to the changing technology. And with the change of technology, we also need civil service to be using this technology. So, as part of our digital governance, We need civil services to be capable of handling all these issues. For example, if there is suddenly a cyber attack happening on India, in that case, this civil service has to play a key role. Then there can be some environmental issues because climate change is taking place, global warming is happening. Because of this, there can be some disasters, some environmental challenges which needs to be addressed. And again, the civil service is going to play a key role in this. Okay. Now moving ahead, let's look at some constitutional provisions related to civil servants in India or civil services particularly. So these articles are important. You should know these articles. For example, Article 309. It clearly says that the regulation of recruitment or the conditions of service of civil servants in India will be either done by the president or governor. Then Article 310, it clearly says that a person who will be part of civil service will be there on the pleasure of president or governor. Means he or she will be serving till the time president or governor wants them to serve. Then Article 311. This is one of the most important articles, I can say, because this provides some kind of immunity to the civil servants in India. It clearly says that there cannot be any arbitrary dismissal, removal, or reduction in the rank of a civil servant without a proper inquiry. So, if you are a civil servant, let's say you become IS officer, just because someone made some allegation against you, that doesn't mean you will be dismissed from the service or removed from the service. There has to be some proper inquiry. After that only the government can take such a decision to dismiss or remove you or reduce your rank. Otherwise it is not possible. So it's a very strong article, I can say. And then we have Article 312. This article says that government can create all India services, but that is possible only through a Rajya Sabha resolution, right? So these are the articles you should know. Now moving ahead, we are talking about the civil services, their role. So now, what kind of issues these civil servants or the entire civil service or bureaucracy is facing? What kind of key issues exist in this civil service? So there are some structural issues. The structure of the civil service has got some problems with it. For example, our bureaucracy is considered to be a generalist bureaucracy. Generalist. See, even you people are studying different subjects, but you are not a specialist of one subject. So you're a generalist person. But there is a debate going on that the governance requires some specialist rather than some generalists. For example, if you're heading health department, let's say you are going to make some policies with regard to health, Ministry of Health. Now you're not a specialist, you're not a doctor, or you're not a specialist of this field of health. You are a generalist, you are an IS officer. So it is being said that a specialist can rather make better policy than a generalist person. Now this is a debate, this is an evolving debate. Whereas the other side of the argument would be that civil services, the job of a civil service is to administer and make policy, and he or she should have a broad vision and broader understanding, which is multidimensional. So if a person is coming from a one particular stream, a specialist one, he cannot look at things in a broader way. So that is also a good argument. So we can say this is one of the structural issue with the civil service, that we have generalists, we do not have much specialist. At least this is a problem. Okay. Then right now, the rules and procedures followed by the bureaucracy are outdated. There are many laws which are existing since the time of Britishers, and those are continuing. And this bureaucracy follows all the rules just as they are mentioned. So sometimes these outdated rules are being followed. Then there is one problem of shortage of personnel. So in the civil services also you will find that there are some vacant seats which are to be filled, and because of this shortage, and it's not about just vacant seats. You see, we have 140 crore people living in India, and to serve them, to govern them, you have very less number of people as part of civil service. So there is shortage. And the fourth structural issue is the resistance from the bureaucracy. These bureaucrats are not ready to change. See, with the changing time, you need to adapt, you need to change, but you will find some resistance from them. For example, if we talk about the issue of lateral entry, that nowadays it is being said that we should introduce some specialists in the bureaucracy at the top level, and this is called as lateral entry. When this discussion started, suddenly many IAS officer or many bureaucrats, they started resisting this idea. So we have this issue wherein we observe that the bureaucracy has become passive as well as become resistant. Okay. Then there are some problems related to promotions. So in Indian civil service, promotions take place on the seniority basis. Now this is a concerning thing, that if a person knows that anyway if he becomes senior, he'll be promoted, and he's not being judged on the basis of his performance, on the basis of his merit, then why would he put all his efforts and work really hard? So this is a question being raised. Then accountability and transparency. Let's say you're going to get some appraisal, but is the system transparent enough to check whether you deserve to get the appraisal or not, whether your performance is getting evaluated in the right manner or not, or whether just because you have good relations with a politician or your seniors you're getting the appraisal, right? So this is one of the systemic issue wherein we do not have a very strong appraisal system which is transparent and where accountability can be ensured. Then we do not have a very strong whistleblower protection system. So if there is a person who is finding that there is some issue in the bureaucracy, let's say he saw that there is corruption going on in the ministry or something, that person if comes out and tells about these things, is he getting the strong protection from the government or the law? That is the question. So whistleblower protection is required. There are laws related to it, but it is not strong enough, it is not robust enough. Then there are some ethical concerns, and this is one of the major concerns with respect to bureaucracy, that although bureaucrats get into service by really going ahead with a tough phase of UPSC recruitment examination, but after getting into service, they show that their character is not that good. They solve the GS4 paper, that is the ethics paper, but still they become unethical. So we have heard many cases of corruption, nepotism from the bureaucracy. Even there is this VIP culture existing in bureaucracy. For example, this Tyagaraja Stadium case was very famous, wherein the stadium was opened and an officer went there with his dog, and the athletes who were supposed to practice in the stadium, they were not allowed to get into the stadium, rather the dog was allowed. So this kind of VIP culture exists in India, and this is ethically incorrect. This is very much concern. Then we have political interference, wherein we observe this frequent transfers taking place. There are many IS officers who are renowned for this thing, that they get transferred as soon as they get in conflict with any politician or any mafia, or they go ahead with good actions, still they are transferred, and there is interference from the politician side. And many a times we have observed some officers, some civil servants, they become loyal towards a political party. Let's say there is a party who is in power right now, so there will be some civil servants who will become loyal towards them. Now this is completely against the values of civil services, the value which was supposed to be there, that was non-partisanship. That means you will not be loyal towards one party or one community, but they are not showing that. This is a major ethical concern, I would say. Then there are some issues related to the capacity building also. For example, the training that is required for civil servants, they are not getting the enough training. For example, right now digital governance we are seeing, are the civil servants getting enough training? No. Then the work culture part, the work culture includes some phenomena such as this red tapeism. That means one file gets starts from one location and reaches to other. It keeps on going from one place to another, and it doesn't get passed. So in India, it is very much common with respect to bureaucracy that if you reach to a government office to get something done, the file will keep on getting relocated from one place to another, and your issue will not be sorted unless you provide them with some amount of money or you go ahead with corruption. So this red tapeism, corruption, this is very common. Many a times the decisions are very much delayed in the bureaucracy. That's why we call it bureaucratic delay. And when it comes to crisis, if there is a big crisis in front of you, and if you're going ahead with those procedural delays, just because in the rule book it is mentioned that you need this document, you need to take this action, because of which you're not addressing the immediate problem, then this makes the entire system inefficient. Right? Every time you can't completely follow the rules, sometimes you have to stop those procedural delays. So all these are issues which we have discussed. You should know each of this. And now, as a solution, you will be giving in the answer the solution for all these issues. Already there are some committees who have given some recommendations from their side. For example, we have this Surinder Nath committee of 2003. They said that the appraisal system should be very transparent. We should first establish such a system. Then we have Hota Committee of 2004. They said merit based promotions should be promoted rather than just seniority based. Then we have second ARC, that is Administrative Reforms Commission. They have given in detail recommendations regarding the reforms required in civil services. So for example, few of the reforms include a periodic performance review for the accountability. So periodically, after a few days or few years, you should check the performance of all the civil servants to check their accountability. Then we have generalist, we need specialist also. One of the way could be that after 13 years of service, a person could be allocated a particular branch or particular stream wherein he can show his specialization. So this can be done. Then e-governance should be promoted, and for that the entire structure of civil service should be modernized. Whatever infrastructure they need, it should be provided. They need training, that should be provided through workshops or some training programs. Then lateral entry. This idea was clearly suggested by second ARC that we should go ahead with some kind of lateral entry. And there should be some stability of tenure for civil servants. We said that they are frequently transferred. Many times a civil servant gets into a district, within few months he gets an order for transfer. So there should be some fixed tenure for civil servants. And for that, civil services boards should be established. This is what second ARC said. Such boards are established at center as well as state level, and they play a key role in the transfer and posting. Then there is this Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs, which was chaired by Shashi Tharoor in the year 2016. He said that we have this IFS service, Indian Foreign Service. What we can do is we can allow NRIs, non-resident Indians, to join this Indian Foreign Service. They will be coming up with their experience because they are exposed to the foreign countries, so they can give a good service over here. So all these are recommendations given by these committees or commissions. Now we'll understand what all the government has done till now, what all reforms the government has already carried out. So one of the reform is 360-degree appraisal system. So it was introduced in the year 2015, when government said that we are going to check your performance but from a 360-degree angle. It's not like your senior will only tell what you did. Rather, we'll check your performance from all different angles. We'll check your performance from your juniors also, your colleagues also, your seniors also. Everything will be checked. Then government brought new cadre policy in the year 2017, so that national integration can be brought in. So the cadre policy says that you will not be getting just one particular state. Different officers are allocated to different states. It's not like you will get your home state as the cadre. You can get different states. And this exposes you to different regions of India. And that's why we say national integration is taking place. Then we have lateral entry. So in 2018, government had gone for this lateral entry. They introduced some people in the bureaucracy at the top level from private sector. Then forced retirement of corrupt and inefficient officers. So government has taken some actions against some officers who were supposed to be inefficient or who were corrupt officials. So for example, in the year 2016, 33 IRS officers from the Ministry of Finance, they were provided with this forced retirement. They had to retire forcefully. Then in the year 2020, government introduced Mission Karmayogi. Now this is an important scheme from government side. Now government wants that, we don't want that rule based civil service. We want a new civil service because the time is changing, technology is changing. This civil service needs to be adapting these new technologies and should become enable the entire system rather than just taking over power or controlling the power. They should enable people to become empowered. And last is this increase in transparency with RTI Act. We brought this Right to Information Act, under which you or me can directly go and request government to give us details about what they have done. So when you file an RTI, a bureaucrat sitting over there has to respond what work he has done. So this has brought some transparency as well as some accountability from governance side or from this civil servant side. Okay. Now, what all reforms are pending? These were the reforms which were already carried out. Now there are many reforms which are still pending and government needs to address them. For example, we talked about this domain specialization after 13 years, that is yet to be done. Then we said that civil service boards should be there. The boards are established, but the boards are not very strong. Many a times state governments do not listen to this or do not take care of the advice given by civil service boards. They needs to be made stronger. Then performance based promotions, this is yet to come. Then as far as this accountability and transparency is concerned, periodic reviews, let's say after 14 years or 20 years, that has to take place. Whistleblower protection, this has to be strengthened. Then as far as ethical part is concerned, because we are observing so many cases of unethical conduct by civil servants, many in their initial phase, as soon as they get into civil service, they start behaving that way. For example, the Pooja Khedkar case we saw. So this shows that some kind of code of conduct is required and this VIP culture has to be curbed completely. This is yet to be addressed. Then as far as digital governance is concerned, as far as the infrastructure for the digital governance is required, all this has to be provided by government. Although it's a work in transition, it is going on, but still this is required. And then at last, some recruitment reforms are also required. For example, we can lower down the entry age for the civil servants so that we can actually capture the young talents in India. And we can go ahead with some psychometric testing. See, this is being considered especially to check the ethical standard of a civil servant, because we are taking the GS4 ethics paper in mains, but still we are not in a position to check whether the person is ethical or unethical. So psychometric test could be one additional layer to check the thoughts of the person. So all these are the reforms that are yet to be taken.
Center yet to formally scrap the FMR with Myanmar. This is very, very important, where we'll be discussing about the free movement regime, and India-Myanmar border becomes again very important for prelims. Current events of national and international importance, and for mains GS paper 2, international relations, India and its neighborhood relations. Okay. So moving forward, there has been a PYQ with respect to the movement of insurgents specifically in the northeastern region, and also what are the various challenges of emanating from India-Myanmar border. So that is why this particular topic becomes very, very important. Okay. So here Actually, the Union Cabinet had announced the scrapping of this FMR policy, but now what they say is that it is not, let's not completely scrap it, but then let us actually introduce stringent protocols in order to regulate the movement of people or the inhabitants or residents within few kilometers of the international border. So this is what it is. Let us see what this particular FMR actually means. So, free movement regime is a bilateral arrangement between India and Myanmar in order to facilitate easier cross-border movement of people living along the Indo-Myanmar border. So, this was actually, it came into existence as a part of India's Act East policy, that is in order to enhance the connectivity, the trade, the cultural ties with Southeast Asia, particularly Myanmar. So, this came in 2018. So, here the individuals who actually reside in the border actually have to have a 1 year border pass. Okay, so this particular pass is valid for 1 year, and if you have that pass, you can reside in the country for about 2 weeks, that is 14 days. So this is the free movement regime. So if you actually see here, this is India and this is the border, that is 1643-kilometer border we actually share with Myanmar. And what are the bordering states? It actually has Arunachal Pradesh, remember from here, it has Nagaland, Manipur as well as Mizoram. So here Meghalaya won't be there, very important. Okay, so we have an unfenced border of 106.43 kilometer long border, and where both the sides actually share the familial ties, the ethnic ties as well as the trade ties. Okay, and here if you see, Arunachal Pradesh has the longest border, very important fact for prelims, followed by followed by you have Mizoram, and then you have Manipur, and then you have Nagaland. And this actually joins or runs from the tri-point. Okay, so here it is India, here it is Myanmar and China. Again, if you see, this is India, this is Bangladesh and Myanmar. So it runs from tri-point with China in the north and tri-point with Bangladesh in the south. And which is the guarding force over here is that it is Assam Rifles. So this is the security force that is responsible for maintaining the security of the border between India and Myanmar. Whereas other things like BSF, these security central armed forces become very important for your examination. For BSF, for example, they are actually used for protection in the India-Pakistan as well as India-Bangladesh region. Okay, now let's move forward. So, if you actually see, this particular unfenced border has become extremely porous in nature, and there have also been increased threats as well as ethnic violence in this particular region. Okay, so that is why there was a Government India notification in 1968 in order to limit this particular free movement of people. So according to that notification, what happened? They said that people can actually inhabit around 40 kilometers from the border, that is on either side of the border. If this is the border, 40 kilometers people can actually reside on either side. But then what happened? This was actually revised in 2004 and this 40 was brought down to 16 kilometers. Okay, so if you see, when was the last revision that was made on this FMR regime? It was in 2016. Okay, so now let us actually move forward. So scrapping was suggested. Why? Because of the ethnic unrest that was taking place in the northeastern region. Next one, they wanted to maintain the demographic structure of the northeastern states because of the porous nature, there were increasing immigrants. Okay, and also surge in narcotics production. So what happened? However, the government called for scrapping off. It was not scrapped off. Now stringent protocols have actually come. That is that 16 kilometers has further been reduced to 10 kilometers. And that too you can actually do only when you have urgent health crisis or in terms of educational needs. Okay, or for livelihood purposes you can do, is what the government has actually said. And then the Assam Rifles will regulate these 43 designated entry as well as the exit points. And for re-entry into India, what happens? Individuals must report at these points and they have to fill a form, and then they will have security as well as health checkup, okay, for drugs and then for arms, ammunitions, etc. So this is what this particular article is saying. However, in order to maintain that, in order to maintain this FMR region with a very, very stringent protocol, there are certain concerns. That is, there is extensive requirement of infrastructure development, okay, either in terms of human resources and other resources in the country. So infrastructure development is required. So that is not sufficient with India. And the second one is that political and civil society groups, they have actually raised concerns about the potential impact it is going to have on the cultural and the ethnic or the familial ties that the people between both the sides actually share.
Dr. Manmohan Singh. Now, whatever contributions Dr. Manmohan Singh ji had made, all that is anyway part of your syllabus. When you are reading economy, you'll read about the economic reforms brought by Manmohan Singh ji. Or when you're reading the post-independence or GS2 part or GS4 part, everywhere he becomes very, very important. Specifically, I'll be talking about the GS4 part, where we have this part called lessons from the lives of and great teachings of great leaders, reformers and administrators. And Manmohan Singh sets as an example over here. Now look at this previous year question. Has the Indian governmental system responded adequately to the demands of liberalization, privatization and globalization started in 1991? What can the government do to be responsive to this important change? Now, if you all remember, this LPG reform was brought by the government led by PV Narasimha Rao, and at that time finance minister was Dr. Manmohan Singh. So it was his key role in bringing this particular reform. So you can understand the relevance of Dr. Manmohan Singh. Now, Dr. Manmohan Singh, he was the 14th Prime Minister of India. He served as Prime Minister for total 10 years consecutively. And he was the first Sikh person to hold this position of Prime Minister. Now, we just need to know a brief about what he has done till now, what was his early life, his education, etc. So he was born in the erstwhile Punjab. So earlier Punjab, which was not divided as such. At that time, he was born in the year 1932 in a village called Gah. Now after 1947, we saw that Punjab was partitioned, and after that his family migrated to India. Specifically, obviously earlier it was India only, but they migrated specifically to the other side of Punjab, that is Indian side of Punjab, and they settled in Amritsar city. Okay, now look at the life of Dr. Manmohan Singh. In the year 1954, he completed his masters in economics from Punjab University. After that, in the year 1957, he had gone for this program called Economics Tripos at Cambridge University. Later on in the year 1962, he completed his doctorate in philosophy from Oxford University. So you can understand, as a student, he was a very bright student. He was very excellent in his studies. Then, after completing his education, in the year 1971, he joined Indian government as economic advisor to the Commerce Ministry. After that, in the year 1972, he was appointed as the chief economic advisor in the Finance Ministry. Later on, in the year 1980 to 82, he became member of the Planning Commission. After that, 82 to 85, he became governor of Reserve Bank of India. And in 85 to 87, he served as the deputy chairman of the Planning Commission. Now, all of this, the entire career graph clearly shows that he was a person with a really good knowledge about economics, and that's why he has served in almost every important position which is related to economics in the Indian government. Okay. Now, after that, in the year 1990, he was appointed as the advisor to the Prime Minister on economic affairs. So he was the main advisor to the Prime Minister directly. And later on, in the year 1991, he was made chairman of the University Grant Commission. And in the same year, he was elected to Rajya Sabha. and he was re-elected to Rajya Sabha multiple times. You see, when he was Prime Minister also, that time also he got from the Rajya Sabha. And then we see in the year 1991 to 1996, that was the P.V. Narasimha Rao government. In that government, he served as the finance minister. A very key and a very important role he played over here. After that, 1998 to 2004, this was the time when Atal Bihari Vajpayee was ruling. At that time, he was the leader of opposition in the Rajya Sabha. And after that, everyone knows he was the Prime Minister of India for next 10 years, that is from 2004 to 2014. So this is the life journey of Dr. Manmohan Singh. Now we need to know what all contributions he made as a finance minister, as a prime minister, or as a leader or as a bureaucrat overall. First of all, we know him as a finance minister. In the year 1991, we brought this LPG reform. At that time, India was facing balance of payment crisis, BOP crisis. That means we did not have enough money, enough resources to pay back our loans or our imports. See, usually we import something from other countries and we have to pay them. Let's say we are paying them in dollars. But to pay, we should have the reserves of dollars with us. So there was a situation when India only had enough amount of reserves which could be paid for next few weeks. After those weeks, how are you going to pay for your imports or your debt? There was nothing. This is called BOP crisis situation, balance of payment crisis situation. And at that time, he was the finance minister and he led this reform called liberalization, privatization, and globalization. India's economy before 1990 was closed economy. We had a socialistic value towards our economy, and we were not open to any investment coming from outside. But here we saw that in the year 1991, we opened up our economy. We liberalized the economy. So new investments started coming up, new foreign direct investments started coming up. He even promoted privatization, and private sector was given enthusiastic role to play in the economy. And in the same year, he brought this new industrial policy which clearly abolished this license raj. Because earlier, for everything, if you want to do any business, if you want to go ahead with any production, first you had to take some approval from the government. But what he did, he abolished this license raj, taking licenses and all. And this provided with some kind of boost to the private sector. And we all know this reform was one of the most important decisions India had taken in the right manner. Because this is the time since which we see that India became one of the fastest growing economy in the world. Millions, or we can say there are many people who came out of poverty because India as a country has economically grown. So this credit for bringing this liberalization or handling this BOP crisis situation, a good credit goes to Dr. Manmohan Singh. Now, apart from that, what other contributions he made? As a finance minister, he devalued rupees 2 times. So, devaluation means you reduce the value of rupees. For example, right now, let's say $1 is equal to 80 rupees. Devaluing means you reduce the value of rupees. You make $1 is equal to, let's say, 90 rupees. So, this is devaluation. Now, when you do this, what happens is we get some help to our exports. When we export something, usually, let's say that thing costs rupees 90. Okay. When we are exporting, we are selling something, we are getting dollars. When you devalue your rupee, your currency, then you get more dollars, more amount of money, or you get some boost towards your exports. Now, this was the idea of Manmohan Singh, that we need to boost our export, and for that this devaluation was required. So he did this 2 times, one time 9%, then 10%. Then there was a question when we were opening up our economy, are we going to go ahead with rupee convertibility, complete, comprehensive, or what we call it as complete set of convertibility where everything can be converted. Let's say there is a foreigner coming to India, he wants to buy something. Can he directly pay his dollars, convert the money into rupees and then buy it? And whenever he wants to go out of this market, he can exchange this rupee with the dollar again and get his dollars and go back. So this is called convertibility. Now he took the decision that we'll go ahead with current account convertibility, and that will be a partial convertibility. So he did not allow the capital market in this. Otherwise, things would have become very much vulnerable. Then he took some decisions with regard to financial market. For example, he empowered SEBI. Now SEBI became an important pillar for us because then we had security market, stock market. Then he allowed foreign institutional foreigners to trade, to invest in India. And he also made some reforms with respect to banking sector. So overall, these are all the contributions of Manmohan Singh as finance minister, right? Now, as a prime minister, let's look at his contribution. First of all, when he was serving as prime minister, India's economic growth was on a good trajectory. For example, we had very much consistent growth rate of 8%, especially in his first term. Then in the second term, the entire world faced this global financial crisis. And at that time, Manmohan Singh's government had ensured that our economy remains very much stable. So somehow he ensured stability in Indian economy even when the world was facing this global financial crisis. Then if you look at the policies of Manmohan Singh government, most of the policies are welfare oriented, and that shows the vision and the thought process of the leader. For example, they brought Manrega in 2005, then they brought Right to Information Act in 2005. See, Manrega ensures that unemployment, the issue of unemployment in the rural area is dealt with. RTI Act ensures transparency and accountability of public officials. Then they brought Right to Education Act, working in the education sector, and National Food Security Act, very important to deal with the issue of hunger and malnutrition. All this shows that all these core issues of Indian society are being dealt by the government. This shows the focus and the vision of government. Okay. Then let's look at their foreign policy. Now, one of the major stuff Manmohan Singh dealt with was this Indo-US nuclear deal, and it was said that this deal was way more important than any war of, let's say, Panipat war. So this deal was very important for India to get access to nuclear technology and nuclear resources. And at that time, he got backlash from the coalition partners of Congress at that time. But still, Dr. Manmohan Singh showed moral courage to go ahead with this deal, even if it would have costed his seat, his political power. Still, he had gone ahead with that deal because it was in the national interest to do that. Then he strengthened his relations or India's relations with ASEAN countries, as well as he had a style called peaceful diplomacy style, which he utilized with China, Pakistan. And this is where, although many people criticize him, but he continued the process of peaceful negotiations. Then, if we talk about infrastructure development, he promoted this PPP, public private partnership. And most importantly, out of all this, I want to focus on the part of ethical governance. And Dr. Manmohan Singh is a very good example to showcase how you can bring in principles, values, virtues in the governance in your day-to-day activities. Now, one thing for which Dr. Manmohan Singh is very much known in all the political parties, almost everyone acknowledges this part, that he was a person of integrity. Integrity is similar to, or what we call it as, having some consistency or harmony between your thought, speech, and action. Even if nobody is watching you, you will do what is right. So he was a person of integrity. If you look at his career graph, he has served as bureaucrat for a very long time. He has served as finance minister, as prime minister. Throughout his career, he was a person who was considered as an incorruptible person. Okay, so very good example. Then many people had criticized him that he's a very weak prime minister or an accidental prime minister. But many times he has shown the moral courage which is actually required, and moral courage shows the strength of the character. So, for example, this Indo-US nuclear deal, even when there were opposition from their own government or from their own coalition partners, he had gone ahead with that. Then he was a person of humility. He did not focus on his personal glorification, rather his focus had always remained on how we can serve the public. Then he was a person of value called empathy. He was empathetic towards people, and this is reflected in the policies or his vision. Whenever he had gone for some kind of policies or some structures, they were very much welfare oriented. This shows that he was an empathetic person. Then he respected the political institutions. He respected the bureaucratic institutions. In a democracy, if institutions become strong, the democracy flourishes. And he always tried to respect that, which we can see with the example of Sale. And any person who is well read is expected to be a person of wisdom, but this is not the case every time. We have knowledge, but we don't utilize it in the right manner. But a person of wisdom does that. So he was a person of wisdom, because when a crisis situation was in front of him, instead of looking at that crisis for a short term with a short term solution, he looked at a long term solution or something which is going to bring happiness in long term. So his 1991 reform or his actions show this wisdom. Then we all know, we have seen his career graph, or we have seen how much educated he was. That shows that he had professional competence. Whichever position he held, he showed that he was excellent in his job. So professional competence is clearly visible in his persona. Then we said he was a visionary leader. Visionary leader means you look at things with a broad picture. You don't look at small pictures or narrow stuffs. You look at how the entire society can be developed in long term. So he was a visionary leader. Then as far as dissent is concerned, in a democracy, dissent has to be respected. And he used to respect that. Whenever someone used to criticize him, he used to accept that criticism. He used to show some humor, although he was a very, what we call as a person who did not speak much, but this grace is very much visible. Then he used to go ahead with self introspection. For example, in the year 2005, he gave a formal apology for whatever has been done in 1984. In 1984, we saw anti-6 riots taking place, and somewhat the involvement of political parties was very much visible. So he gave this formal apology, which shows that he is a person who self introspects and understands his responsibility very clearly, and he was very much accountable to. So these are all the traits of a good leader. These are the ethical principles which any person can learn from Dr. Manmohan Singh.